Welcome. There has been a murder. There's going to be a lot of murder here, isn't there?
Whole lot of murder.
Murder week!
Full disclosure, I got. Very recently, I was thumbing through Yahoo or some weird news
What are you,
thing.
fucking 90?
I don't know, man.
I saw it on the Yahoo.
I saw it on the Yahoo. I got a notification.
Hey, it's a trustworthy established site.
It might be the Yahoo. I don't remember where it came from. That Gary Ridgway was on hospice care in Washington State Prison in Walla Walla, Washington. And I got pretty excited because I did not want Ridgway to die without being able to tell his story. And then in the process of doing the studying and focusing on what he did back in his prime, I didn't actually look to confirm that these were just 5 anonymous sources that called into the news. And the Department of Corrections actually came out and said, no, he's not on hospice care. He's not in good shape, but he's not this close to death's door.
You're like, you think we're going to put this fucker on hospice care?
I mean, I think you have to. But at the same time, I'm hoping that by the time this comes out, we will get a good look at if justice actually can be served through karma and this guy dies before we get this out. We've done a lot of episodes where we look a little silly because we'll talk about something and then somebody dies right afterwards.
Yeah, but I think we've killed good people.
I know. That's why we need to kill a bad one.
Okay, so
here.
you want us to use these powers that we have to actually do some good.
Everybody
okay,
focus your
yeah,
attention.
I'm with that.
Gary Ridgway was the most prolific serial killer in United States history for a very, very long time. Samuel Little would end up unseating him fairly recently, but Gary Ridgway has 49 confirmed murders under his belt. And this is actually one of the longest serial killer manhunts in history, if not the longest. And it's not because Gary Ridgway was this mental giant that continued to evade the police. He wasn't very smart. He's a fairly average guy. He held the exact same job down for 30 plus years. Does that mean that he wasn't good at his job? No, but he was able to blend into society as such to where there wasn't a lot of question about him because he lived in a time where things were just different.
Yeah. And if he didn't come off as like outwardly weird or anything, then I guess.
Even outwardly weird, it was the kind of weird that you would see out of a neighbor. Like everybody kind of has a neighbor that's too friendly. This guy murdered 49 people and he had neighbors that said he was overly friendly. He was such a chameleon, and eventually, thankfully, technology does catch up to him, but his story is incredible. Before we jump into it, remember, rate, review, subscribe. It's all looking great. The numbers are so cool. Starting a new year, 2026, we want to see just even more. You guys spreading the word, telling your friends, letting people know, what podcasts you love listening to. It's so cool to hear that that's how we're stretching this out. We don't do a lot of advertising.
No.
So those numbers are going up by either people finding us or you guys suggesting us. And it's so appreciated that you're doing that. Also, we have our Patreon. Absolutely go subscribe. There's some fun stuff on there. We just keep coming up with these little fun extras to record. I've really enjoyed doing it.
It's nice to be able to jump into something. First of all, not going to lie, it is nice to not have to study something for 5 days.
Yes.
It's fun, though, to be able to pick out something that you have to pass over in our course of study and been like, oh, what is that? What is that? Because you can't afford to rabbit hole all the time, despite the fact that we do. But to be able to come back to something and being like, now I can dig into this a little bit more for a little 45-minute snippet.
Yeah, 45 minutes is such an easier task to boil something down in than 3 hours.
Yeah, a little bit. All right. Well, how do you want to introduce this sicko? You got Ridgway'd. Was that not a thing?
Oh, no. Many people got Ridgway'd.
All right.
Gary Leon Ridgway is... It's tough. I don't really have words for quite how this kind of story can go, because there definitely is possibly the most evil person that we've talked about, not on the podcast, but as far as like somebody who is working and is still alive. Probably one of the most evil guys that's still alive.
There's something inherently that it's a different flavor of evil is personal killing.
Well, and especially in the manner that he does it.
That's what I'm saying is there are atrocities that somebody does to where that's an evil in itself, where you can just look at numbers indiscriminately and not really care. Then there's the act of just by yourself going and killing somebody. Then there's the act of luring somebody and like bringing somebody in to then murder them. So there's levels of this shit. This is a special kind of evil.
Yeah, and his childhood is very tough to nail down, because by the time Ridgway ends up getting caught and arrested, both of his parents are dead. His brothers have realized that the Gary that they knew was not the Gary that was out patrolling the streets. And he was very spectacularly unspectacular. So when you go to try to interview people in his childhood, you're going to get mixed stories because he just didn't stand out that much. Born February 18th, 1949 in Salt Lake City to Thomas and Mary. He was the middle of three sons. His older brother was very smart, very well adjusted. He was kind of the apple of the parents' eye. Thomas was a bus driver, very average individual himself. His mother, Mary, worked at J.C. Penney as a fitter, and Mary is going to kind of be an overarching presence, not necessarily from what's heard from the outside, but during the interviews that they did with Gary Ridgway, I'm not giving him a pass, but you can kind of see how there's something shaped inside of Gary by his relationship with Mary, Gary and Mary, that kind of helps you understand a little bit. And even if it's kind of tough, I'm going to point some things out to just kind of maybe try to push that along the way. Gary was a poor student. He had dyslexia, which I'm sure back in the 50s and 60s wasn't something that was looked at and really understood well. Mm-hmm. It's a very complicated issue that people have... the success stories hearing that somebody is...
As shitty as it is to say, that happens in school in the 70s is just like, oh, you can't understand that? Okay, come with us. There's another class for you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember kids that were dyslexic that I went to high school with. And even back then, there wasn't there wasn't a whole lot for him. He ended up graduating at the age of 20 from Tyee High School in SeaTac, Washington. Got held back a couple grades, he just wasn't a great student. When his IQ was tested, they said that he rang in right between like 80 to 82, which is pretty...
borderline.
Yeah, it's borderline. Gary had a real big problem in his mother being so demanding when it came to school, because there were times, and again, I'm going to keep referencing his interviews because he's the best source of information. Normally, a serial killer is never the best source of information about his own life, but there's just certain things that you can see, and I watched a regrettable amount of interview time with Gary. He's not well-spoken. He's not articulate. He needs to be kind of prodded. You can tell when he's interviewing with a male versus when he's interviewing with a female, just his reaction to both of them and the way that he asks questions, or the way that he answers questions. But he gives you enough.
He adds on at the end of female question. He goes,
not so much that as far as like he can never find his words. But when he does find his words, he gives you enough detail in what he says to be like, he didn't make that up.
Yeah.
That came from somewhere inside. That wasn't manufactured in his mind. His father was just a pushover. His mom just kind of ran the house. She wore the pants in the family, the very tight-fitting, revealing pants in the family. Thomas, being a bus driver, would take Gary to work some days.
You got the hots for Mary?
Huh?
You got the hots for Mary?
We'll get there. when Thomas would take Gary to work, he would be riding around on his bus route with his father, and his father would point to the prostitutes on the side of the road and basically tell Gary that they were just the worst members of society and just bad people in general. And then there were times when Gary would be left on the bus and his dad would go take a break and he would frequent these prostitutes. So Gary, not a shining light of monogamy.
Yeah, it's classic misdirection. See those women, son? They're filthy, and I do not have sex with any of them. Especially not that one.
At the same time, Gary's enough of a pushover to where his wife broke a plate over his head after an argument during dinner.
That's a classic sitcom stereotype move. The husband's mouthing off, "Oh, what's my dinner?" And the wife just goes and gives him a little bump. A real plate, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Gary didn't fight back. Gary didn't yell. Gary didn't scream. He didn't hit his wife back. He just kind of left. And it wasn't really necessarily a bad thing because you don't really want to meet violence with violence in that type of a situation.
So Thomas, did Thomas come back after this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Thomas he was down for it. He didn't call the cops, didn't fight or anything like that. At the same time, unfortunately, I think with what was going on in Gary's mind, these kind of interactions between him and his dad and his mom weren't good for his development.
Do you think that his dad was going to the prostitutes and having him mimic the same stuff? Like,
I don't think so.
Can you step on my nuts with these high-heeled shoes?
I think Gary's kink was probably silence, or Thomas's kink was probably silence.
It was literally him just hiring prostitutes. So what do you want, sweetie? Honestly, can you just like hug me?
Just be nice to me.
Just be nice to me. Tell me I'm a handsome boy.
Ask me how my day was.
Yeah. Don't hit me.
Along with Gary's mom really ragging on him about his schoolwork, she was just a very degrading woman all the way around. There were reports from neighbors, and again, these were neighbors. Gary also kind of confirms this, but it wasn't all the neighbors. But it's because, again, this is an unspectacular family.
Yeah.
Said she would dress in a pretty provocative manner. She always had a halter or a tube top on. Tight pants, tight or short hemline on the skirts. And Gary was also a bedwetter. Gary was a bedwetter until he.
How does that have any bearing on his mom dressing, like she's down?
Give me about 15 seconds.
Okay.
Gary wet the bed until he was 13 years old. And when he would wet the bed, Mary found out about it. She would come in. She would be angry about it. She would change the sheets. And then she would take Gary into the bathtub and she would set him down into the bathtub and she would scrub him clean, including scrubbing his penis. Spick and span. Cleanest boy penis you've ever seen. You gotta get everywhere. A lot of the times when she was doing this, she would just be wearing a silk robe, something that a mother probably shouldn't be wearing around her son. And Gary told of times when she would be washing his penis and her robe would fall open in front of her 13-year-old son. And Gary kind of started to develop this sexual desire for his own mom.
Okay, so we got an Oedipus complex. We got some Norman Batesy type stuff.
He's Freud's wet dream. Had Sigmund Freud lived to meet Gary Ridgway,
his wet dreams were Freud's wet dream.
Yeah, it would have changed everything. And
you think?
The idea, as far as like the Freudian Oedipus complex thought process, is whether psychosomatically or just through development, he says that boys are usually in a mode where they would tend to feel like their father would be a competitor for their mother's affection.
Yeah,
And Gary seeing his father getting plates broken over his head, being domineered by his mother, may have done some pretty irreparable damage to Gary feeling like he would be a viable sexual partner for his own mother. Because again, you look at a father as a pillar of strength, somebody that will always be tougher than you are. Mm-hmm. And then when you see your dad get bullied by your mom, it kind of lowers his stature in your eyes.
I see what you're getting at here. This is still just a very, Yeah.
And that's a Freudian take.
Okay.
That's a Freudian belief. Psychosomatically, you can go through.
We're going to find out some fucked up stuff about Sigmund Freud.
Oh yeah, he's going to be a very fun episode. These changes to kind of your sexual understanding aren't always on the surface. These can just be things that are being connected in your brain at a very young age. Gary understood that his mother would dress provocatively. In many interviews, he talks about how he would wait for her to come home from work and she would go out in the back and she would sunbathe in her two-piece bikini and he would just sit at the window and watch her and look at her and fantasize about his mom.
I'm sure he's just watching her.
He said that she was very much a tease at JCPenney, where when she would be measuring a man for his suit and they would make an off-color comment, she would maybe grind up against them, or she would talk to Gary about how the men would get aroused when she would measure their inseam. Just some shit that a mother should never, ever, ever bring up to a son.
Or child, or just...
Yeah. Couple that with a lady that's washing her kid's penis when he's 13 years old. There's a lot of shit that's going on in Gary's life.
Did you switch from dick to penis real quick in that moment?
Kid dick sounds weird.
Okay, that makes sense.
Penis, anything
Let's
below.
get to where we can just call it a dick when Gary's an adult.
Yeah, kid dick. At the same time, he had this deep-seated hatred for her because he always talked about in his interviews how his mom and dad would always threaten to send him to the R-word school, or that the next bus that he would be picked up on to go to school would be the short bus. Gary was dyslexic.
So his dad was a dick too?
I mean, less so, but it was mostly like, if I go with my wife's choices, maybe she won't beat the shit out of me.
Break another plate?
Yeah.
We're running out of plates.
He was just a bit of a pushover. But that's not to say Gary wasn't kind of a forward-facing, normalish individual. He was fairly normal at school. He played football in high school. He talked to girls. He had girlfriends. If there was trouble to be had, Gary would get into it. Neighbors said that they could hear physical abuse coming from the Ridgway house. Just anybody that lived near him could hear what was going on. But Gary and his brothers never said anything about it to his friends. Their friends. They wouldn't ever talk about anything that was going on inside the home.
So he's the middle of three sons.
Yep.
Does any of this occur to any of the other kids?
I think that everybody's kind of getting it, but I don't think just because of the bedwetting is kind of a different thing. And then I also think that the other kids didn't necessarily get the attention because she just kind of focused on Gary to bully him.
Gotcha. Okay, so so as far as the mother goes, she was also abusive toward him. So this kind of seems to me to, you know how when we do these type of serial killer ones, you can always find pieces of the serial killer when they create like shitbags in movies or like killers in movies.
Yeah.
So this would be from The Red Dragon, which is the prequel to Silence of the Lambs. And The Red Dragon is Ray Fiennes, who Ed Norton has to try to catch, and he has to use Hannibal Lecter in the same way that Jodie Foster did to try to catch him. And he, as growing up as a kid, he wet the bed till a late age, but his mother would threaten to cut his dick off if he was making himself unclean. Not sure if any of that kind of stuff happened, but you still get the weird sexual undertones. You still get the like abuse and everything.
Serial killers are offshoots for quite a few different characters.
Yeah.
Like and it's one of those things where it's almost like the truth is so much stranger than what fiction would be that you have to use it. There was a show on Fox a while ago called Prodigal Son, and it was about this kid who had a historically famous surgeon father that was known as the surgeon serial killer. And they take a lot of things from this, just as far as the upbringing goes. Or not the upbringing, but the things that Gary did with the son, because spoiler alert, Gary's going to have a son.
Oh.
Yeah. Gary also had some things beyond the wetting the bed that we kind of have to point to. As a teen, Gary was very abusive to animals. One of the stories that he tells is about locking a cat inside of a cooler and suffocating it, and then pulling it out and torturing it some more. He was hell on the bird population in Washington. Guy killed a lot of birds, like enough so that when he brings it up, he just talks about them as the birds. Like, not even specifically what happens. He's like, killed animals? Are you talking about the birds? They're like, what other animals? He's like, well, there was a cat, and he's naming kind of singular things, but he keeps going back to the birds. Along with that, Gary had a penchant for starting fires. And
hold on. I mean, every kid goes through that phase at some point. Every kid almost burns down their grandma's house.
Yeah, there was kind of a list of things that I would go through, and this is known as the McDonald Triad.
I'm trying to pick out the normal things out of this.
Yeah. Yep.
There's not a lot of them.
We'll talk about the McDonald Triad in a second, but as I'm going through this, because the McDonald Triad is known as kind of like the holy triumvirate of what creates a psychopathic kind of violent criminal.
It's like a what am I trying to say? Is the Venn diagram where it's the circles that kind of intersect with each other in the middle. So if you have these certain things in the middle of the Venn diagram, it's like if you have all three of these things joined together, you're a serial killer.
I wasn't really an animal cruelty guy. There were a couple years when if you were a rock chuck after a day of school at high school, it was probably going to be a bad day for you. The last time I wet the bed, I was probably like 22.
Yeah, let's leave that off the table. No, that's not a good.
As a kid, that wasn't an issue.
It's not an indicator.
Fires, though, that's the tough one. My dad traveled a lot to Wyoming, and Wyoming has some kind of special places where you can do like a drive-through firework liquor store to kind of get everything.
What a time to be alive.
And while I think they still exist. While he wasn't big on the liquor.
You don't get rid of something like that.
No. So anything that works that way, you don't get rid of it. But he'd always bring home fireworks, bottle rockets, all the illegal stuff that's just super fun to shoot. And there was a time, probably for multiple years in junior high, where me and my buddies would come home and we'd have just bottle rocket wars in the backyard. There'd be fires started on a pretty regular basis.
Of course.
Nothing too serious. Nothing as serious as Gary was getting into.
Gotta keep the reflexes up.
So in the 1960s, there was a psychiatrist named J.M. McDonald. He had this theory of the McDonald Triad, basically that animal cruelty, fire setting, and bedwetting signaled that there were underlying psychological issues that could have a pretty decent potential for future violent behavior. So,
not to pick this apart, but if we're looking at this, animal cruelty, I get. That seems like a cornerstone of a psychopath. Fire setting, and then bedwetting. Technically, every kid wets the bed. I think they're probably getting into older kids. And then fire setting, at one point or another, everyone likes to burn shit.
There's varying degrees. I mean, if you wet the bed when you're 3, it's different than if you wet the bed when you're 9.
He's like, well, all these have to take place at the age of 12. You have to be doing all 3 concurrently.
The McDonald 12 Triad is what we're going to call it. All of the data that he came up with was very flawed. Studies that would seemingly confirm his belief were mainly driven towards like he would do different surveys with like inmates and violent offenders and then a regular prison population. And he would say, well, look at this. These violent offenders, 70% of these violent offenders had the McDonald Triad. And that's a very statistically significant number. And then he would leave out the part of the general population, nonviolent offenders, where there would be like 35% of them shared this McDonald Triad. But the 35% and the 70% look a little bit different when you take out the violent aspect of this. That can show you that normal nonviolent offenders were also
bedwetters.
That were also into these things. More of the modern studies have just proven the same inconclusive nature. There's just no good way to link it together, but it is more likely a sign that there's significant childhood trauma, abuse, neglect that would cause violence. Totally makes sense.
Correct. So it's not technically the animal cruelty, fire setting and bedwetting. Well, I can't say for the bedwetting, but those things are byproducts of the actual issue that leads to the kind of psychological, I guess, state of mind.
Yeah, traumatic events in those types of situations are always going to...
Gary, when you were a child, did you anything stranger happened to you? No, man. I mean, I wet the bed. And he's like, oh, that's pretty normal. He's like, yeah, but when I, instead of just changing my pajamas, my mom would make me get in the bathtub. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, some parents don't want you to climb back into bed if you haven't bathed. And then she would clean my private parts. Oh, yep. Let's talk about that a little bit more.
Had the cleanest penis on the block. She was real thorough. At the age of 16, you kind of start to...
Oh, no, Mom, I wet the bed again. Is that what he was at a certain point?
As gross as it sounds, I wouldn't be surprised. Age of 16, Gary has a kind of a defining moment in his life. He ran into a 6-year-old boy that was playing Cowboys and Indians in the woods. And he asked the boy if he wanted to go into the woods and build a fort. And the boy says yes.
Oh, God damn it.
Luring him deeper into the woods.
That's bullshit because kids fucking love forts.
Yeah. Well, and he's dressed like a cowboy, so he's definitely down for a fort. No, not Gary. The 6-year-old's dressed like a cowboy.
Okay.
If Gary was a 16-year-old dressed like a cowboy...
Kid would probably still be like, this fucking cowboy wants to go build a fort. Sweet.
As they're getting deeper and deeper into the woods, Gary says to the boy, you know that there's adults out here that would kill a kid like you. Kid being freaked out turns around. Gary pulls out a knife and stabs the boy through the rib cage and into his liver. The boy, this is so crazy because 6-year-old boy not going to be able to identify Ridgway, ends up spending a lot of time in the hospital. Ridgway's never questioned in this whole entire thing that happens because he can't be. The boy turns around and asks him why he did it, and Gary's laughing, and he says, I wanted to know what it would be like to kill somebody. And then the boy said that Gary stuck the knife out again, and he thought he was going to stab him again, and Gary wiped one side of the blade off on one shoulder, one side of the blade off on the other shoulder, put it back in his pocket, and just walked away.
And the kid... Well, I guess he would have to get brought in for the kid to ID him.
Well, yeah, and he was 6. There's a 10-year difference. He wouldn't really have any idea or recollection. And shortly after this, his parents were so freaked out by the whole ordeal that they just moved.
Yeah.
They didn't want anything else to happen to the kid. This doesn't end up coming to light until A, Gary is interviewed, and B, until his trial when the kid comes and actually testifies to say that this was Gary that did this. But just a wild turn of events to happen at 16 years old. Thankfully, this kid didn't kill him. I usually wouldn't do this at any point in an episode.
I mean, he didn't kill the kid. Kid survived.
Yes, kid survived. If I can just be perfectly honest about how I feel about Gary and his mother, had Gary just had sex with his mom and then killed her, I think at this point in time, the world might be a lot better place.
So did Norman Bates do that? I want to feel like Norman Bates did that.
I don't think it was till later, but either way, Gary getting arrested for killing his mom, I think would have saved a lot of things in life. Just the way that Gary described his mother in the interviews that he did, he would kind of be spurred on by the interviewer asking, did you have any anger towards your mother? And he would slowly spit out that he did.
What did he call her? Just curious. Like when he's addressing her, is he like mom? Does he call her mother?
It wasn't mother. It was usually mom.
Oh. Mother makes more sense.
There were points when it was outside of the sexual stuff when they were talking to him about him wanting to get revenge, and they would ask what he wanted to do to her. He said things like, well, I would go get a knife. And this is the first time that he reveals about the boy. He goes, just like I did with the boy, and I would slit her throat. I would cut her face. I would cut her all over her body because that was the thing that she cared about the most was her looks. And I want to take that away from her. Yeah. So he has this weird push-pull of love and hate and sexual frustration towards his mother that just wires his brain in a way to where he has this just insatiable sex drive. He's pounding it out multiple times a day. His wives in interviews said that he was demanding sex from them multiple times a day. He was coming home from work for sex.
Good luck, buddy.
And this is all while he's cruising the strip and picking up prostitutes, that this is going on later in life. He ends up marrying his high school sweetheart, who, it's kind of funny to think about it because he didn't graduate until he was 20 years old. And his high school sweetheart was 19 at the time.
Dated her all 6 years.
Yeah. Graduates, marries her. Her name is Claudia Craig. He then enlists in the Navy, gets shipped off for a tour on riverboats in Vietnam. He says that he never saw combat, which I don't know if he was just trying to downplay it, because I'd seen other places that his unit did see some combat. Regardless, he said that it wasn't anything kind of incredible that was going on. The relationship with Craig when he comes back is just very odd. I'm sure it was odd the whole time, but he really, really liked to choke her during sex. Like, that was something that he enjoyed on the regular. Also, he had this weird desire to have sex outside. Parks, by the Green River, in vehicles, just kind of everywhere.
I mean, some of that stuff's okay sometimes. And I mean, who doesn't like a little light choking?
We're not here to kink shame. Gary's going to be the only guy that I'm going to kink shame, because while choking, having sex outside, not weird. If every single time you're like, hey, I got a chub, do you want to go out in the backyard? That tends to be a little odd.
That's true.
It's a bridge
Here's
too
the dog
far.
collar, go outside.
Yeah. Along with that, his bondage fetish was present very, very early in his life. After his tour in Vietnam and him coming home, he would end up going to the Philippines, and in the Philippines, Ridgway caught gonorrhea a number of times.
No.
From multiple prostitutes.
No.
While he was away, Claudia found a less aggressive sex partner that she then fell in love with. Gary was outraged when he came back, and she told him that she had met somebody else, even though Gary was just banging prostitutes left and right in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. I don't really know how you can get angry.
I don't feel like this guy really has the wiring to know what a double standard is.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
This man has had a precedent set very early on that the normal rules of society do not really apply.
And he's never going to adhere to them. He was pretty less enthused that this was also a black man that she had found, so not really to pile on Gary anymore, but he seems like there was some racism tied into kind of some of his work.
No, pile fucking on this guy.
The couple attended, the pile is going to just be incredible by the end of this. They attempted to reconcile. It never really worked out. Gary was dishonorably discharged from the Navy. The couple would end up filing for divorce in 1972. Claudia would end up moving to San Diego, I believe, with the man that she had found that was not Gary.
Okay, so he enlisted, he went to Vietnam, then came back a little bit, then he was stationed in the Philippines.
Yep.
She never went with him at any point, because that would get in the way of all the hookers.
Probably.
Okay. He comes back, she found someone better. They try to get back together. Okay, yeah. Classic love story.
And we're 72. We're still 10 years out from when the fireworks really start. Well, on a cruise one night, I'm sure you guys did that in your very small town where everybody would pile into their cars and you would cruise the main strip and play your music and everything was real awesome.
We used to put in our favorite 8 tracks. See whose system could bump the loudest.
One night on a cruise in 1972. So same year he got divorced. Gary pulled a little cop impersonation gag and pulled over his future second wife, Marsha Brown.
Slick move, Gary.
Yeah. If I can give any advice to women out there, if somebody pulls you over and impersonates his way as a cop, don't give him your number. Don't start dating him.
Ma'am, you're under arrest. Why? For theft. You've stolen my heart. Can I go now?
They hit it off pretty quick. They would end up getting married in 1973, so less than a year. Brown is a bit of a thickie. She was a little larger. Gary loved it. Gary absolutely loved everything about Marsha. this was a love that I don't think Gary ever had with Claudia. There was something about her that really hooked him.
Yeah, she liked to be choked, and she loved to fuck outside.
That could be it. Again, they banged everywhere, just as Chris insinuated correctly. She said Gary was insatiable. She also said that he loved sneaking up behind her in the woods and choking her, which again, massive red flag. She said that he was practicing walking quietly to see if he could sneak up on her. Maybe one of the weirder stories that I've ever heard in a relationship.
That's my Gary.
One night, they're coming back from dinner. She's driving, so Gary must have been some sort of an equal rights to let his woman drive. Gary got out of the passenger side, snuck around the back of the car, choked her, then ran around to the other side of the car and tried to convince her that it wasn't him.
How does that... Okay.
He denied being the one that did it and said that it was another man. That feels...
Okay, in my head, I guess I'm playing it out different in my head. I'm playing it out like they're sitting in the car together, and he's like, be back in a second. And he gets out and literally just walks around the back of the car and then gets in the back seat behind her and chokes her, and then gets out and walks back around the other side of the car and gets back in. She's like, the fuck was that? He's like, what? That wasn't me.
I think it was more they probably got out, he circled around the back of the car and choked her, and then came back around and went around the front and was like, what's the commotion?
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, what's going on?
Are you okay? Just some very weird tendencies that Marcia just kind of
Weird
looked
is
past.
being nice.
Marcia would end up giving birth to Gary's only child. His name was Matthew. He was born in 1975, as far as I can surmise. Thank God there's not a lot for Matthew Ridgway online. I'd like to think that he changed his name. I hope he lives a different life away from his father's legacy. During the marriage, Marcia and the family found God. And boy, when Gary found God, Gary was whole hog into God. He turned into what could be referred to as a religious freak. I believe they started out with 2 churches. Not going to name the churches. Don't really want to throw shade for this guy. Nobody should have to take accountability for this guy because it wasn't them. He would
I don't know. We've discussed some churches that turn people pretty fucking weird.
Not like this.
Okay.
Not like Gary. He's this religious weirdo, all while still soliciting prostitutes. And
yeah, dude, you gotta wean yourself off of it. You're so fucking judgy. You want him to just quit hookers cold turkey?
God should be the only hooker that he needed at this time. Gary would spend his weekends proselytizing around the neighborhood. He would be going door to door, knocking on his neighbors' doors, sharing the good word. And when doors were shut in his faces and people rejected listening to the gobbledygook that he was spewing out of his face, he'd get angry. He'd come home and he would tell Marcia about how Bill down the street's a dickhead because he didn't listen to him, and Bill's going to hell, just really laying it on thick. Not only that, while watching TV, sitting around the house, doing pretty much anything, Gary would just clutch a Bible in his lap. So I don't know if he's covering up the weird boner that he has thinking about God or prostitutes or his mom or what. Pretty weird behavior. Not necessarily as weird as crying in church. Like just right in the middle of a sermon, people would just hear Gary bawling his eyes out in the pews.
It sounds like a form of like, I know it's not, I don't know, maybe it is. A form of like schizophrenia or he has like severe like mood swings or something.
I think it's guilt. Honestly, as bad as it sounds, trying to stand up for Gary, I think he has a guilt about what's going on. So you think this is a situation where, like, when he's fucking a prostitute, he's slapping her ass with the Bible, much like
to even it out?
not exactly like that, but much like an addict is trading drugs for religion, and you can be addicted to something. I think Gary was addicted to prostitutes pretty clearly. And so he was trying to fight those urges by giving himself to God. But he realized that the urges for the prostitutes were stronger than his faith. And there's kind of some interesting mixes that come in later in life. But all the while he's out talking to his neighbors about his religion and clutching Bibles and crying in church, he's still picking up women on the street. Marcia also mentioned that Gary just continuously would come home late, wet, and dirty. And
not surprising there.
Piece of dating advice number 2. If your man ever comes home late, wet, and dirty on a pretty consistent basis and doesn't work in a job that would make him either late, wet, or dirty, or some mix of the three, it's probably a bad sign. Not a good sign.
If he's not playing intramural sports.
He definitely is not if he's not mentioning it to you. This is kind of something that tips me off a little bit because Gary says that his first murder that he can remember was in 1982. If you're coming home late, wet, and dirty, there's a chance that you might have been out burying somebody prior to 1982. At the same time, we're going to kind of talk about the patterns of how his victims were found. And 1982 is kind of the first time that missing women start matching up with being found underneath this quote unquote Green River Killer's MO. Just how it all comes about.
Okay.
Eventually, Marsha lost some weight. She got a little extra hot. Gary, of course, got jealous. Jealous of his wife for trying to better herself while still out with ladies of the night. Interesting kind of little fight back and forth here as their relationship deteriorates.
When you were writing the notes, were you trying to just space out different names of prostitutes? Because you got prostitute, you got whore. I'm up for it. I like the fact that you're broadening. You don't want to just use the same term over and over. I just like the fact that it was prostitutes, whores, ladies of the night.
It's kind of one of those things where we're a very pro-prostitution podcast. I think that we've said it quite a bit.
Well, hold on. Not in the sense that we frequent, not in the sense that we use. We're pro-sex work. We're pro do whatever the fuck you want. You gotta clarify that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just if it was legalized and there was a safety net that was built into it, I feel like it performs a duty of society that we just can't quite reckon. Like it's a necessary
World's oldest
thing.
profession, man.
Yep.
Ooh, is that a full episode thing or is that a Patreon thing?
The history of prostitution?
Yeah. That's got to be a full episode because we can talk about brothels and how things happen from like around the world, right?
Yeah. And again, if it's the
What do we
world's oldest
title that episode?
prostitution,
Is that just like fucking all over the world? Hookers through history.
that's what it is. Hookers
Okay.
through history. Marsha would eventually get tired of Gary's shit. She probably got tired of getting choked quite a bit.
She's also hot now.
Yeah, and she's hot, so she's ready to go. She files a restraining order against Gary. Of course, Gary's going to file a restraining order against her. If you had to put a gun to my head and make me choose, I'm going to say that Marsha's was more legitimate.
You can't fire me. I quit.
Exactly. The couple would end up divorcing in 1981. Custody of Matthew would end up going to Marsha. Gary got him every other weekend. I believe Gary was somewhere in the range of like $278, something like that he was paying monthly for child support. There's kind of this weird theme that Gary's career, which I forgot to talk about because I'm an idiot. After Gary got out of the military, he was hired by the Kenworth Trucking Company in Washington to paint trucks. Mm-hmm. So Gary would end up holding this job from like, I want to say it was like 1972 all the way up until 2001. It was right around 30 years.
So job he had in high school, Navy. Once he gets back, starts working the same job again.
Yep.
Okay.
Pretty much. So it would have been before 72. It was over 30 years. I know that. But he just had a very menial job. It wasn't anything that he felt like he was creative. He mentions a lot of times
The
that
man didn't need a lot. He just needed some money to buy his hookers.
well, he would say that he wasn't the best painter at Kenworth. So it's kind of one of these things where he wasn't the best student. He always compared himself to his brothers. He was never the best at anything that he did, but some of his future endeavors, he will come out and confidently claim that he was the best at what he was doing. So it's almost like he was maybe looking for a little bit of something that he could hold on to and hold up as like, nobody does this like me. Unfortunately, it's a very sinister act that he's the best at.
Unfortunately, he's holding a head while he says that.
Yes. Gary begins cruising these events from this. It was a group that was called Parents Without Partners. And through this, Gary ends up pulling numerous girlfriends. Just left and right, he's pulling these women out.
He's using the PTA to get his dick wet?
Kind of.
Okay.
A very similar setup.
He's just meeting with single moms.
Pretty much.
This is why there's no more groups of single moms anymore. And I'm not complaining about that, but there's a lot of single dads out there that like to find some single moms.
He gave single dads a pretty bad name for a long time. All the while,
these single mom groups really died off after like 1981.
He's taking the loss of Marcia pretty hard. There was a point where he talks about during the interview that he thought real hard about killing Marcia and killing Matthew, but he knew enough to understand that if he were to kill his ex-wife and his son, he would be the first person to be looked at. And it was just enough to where it was almost like the way that he had the desire to kill his mom but couldn't pull the trigger on it because he was just a kid and he couldn't come to make himself do that. Those weren't the barriers to wanting to kill Marcia that he had anymore, and maybe it would have been a prophecy that he could have helped himself fulfill.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he had figured out enough to know that if he was going to continue this weird deviant lifestyle that he had, maybe some future plans that he was fighting or he was hiding from the world at this point, that he couldn't do anything to Marcia. Early 1982, Gary is picked up for soliciting an undercover officer.
Eventually, it's going to happen. I mean, this guy's gotten lucky up to this point that he probably hasn't picked up a cop.
Yeah, May 11th, 1982, Gary gets picked up for soliciting this undercover. He's brought down to the station. He's questioned. He's fairly honest about his prostitutorial proclivities.
His penchant.
Yeah, he's got a penchant for the working woman. July 8th. 1982. So we're talking May 11th is when he gets picked up for soliciting an undercover cop. July 8th, 1982.
Obviously doesn't have a record at that point, I'm guessing.
No, and if it is, it's just for minor stuff.
So he's easily out.
Yeah. Wendy Lee Cofield, age 16, goes missing on July 8th, 1982. Her body would be found July 15th in the Green River. She's considered the first known victim.
Can you give me kind of a breakdown area-wise where the Green River is in comparison to where he's at?
It's very, very close. So he lives in SeaTac, which is more of southern Seattle area, between Seattle and Tacoma, where the airport is, obviously. The Green River kind of runs along there. I believe it's Elmclaw and...
Unumclaw?
Huh?
Unumclaw?
Yeah. And
so somewhere up, okay, so definitely more Pacific Northwest of the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, western side of Washington.
Okay.
Her body's found in the Green River. Like I say, she's considered this first known victim of Gary Ridgway. Gary says that this is the first one that he can remember. I would bet money that this is not his first victim. 1982, from July to December, 17 women end up going missing. Only 6 were found in 1982.
Okay, hang on. I gotta absorb this real quick, okay? So in a 6-month span, 17 women, that's almost 3 a month, are going missing.
Coming off of 2 months prior being arrested for soliciting an undercover officer.
Okay, so 17 women go missing in a 6-month period. You said only 6 of them were found in 1982.
Yep. So there's still 11 bodies that are floating out there from his rampage in 1982.
Correct. Is there anything that's happening during this period, this 6-month period, that points anything toward him?
No. And it's...
How is this area, and maybe you'll explain this later, the kind of, the area that he's operating in, how big is this area he's killing these 17 women?
It's known as the SeaTac Strip. It's basically where they put the airport in. There were new flight paths that went over housing in different areas that just became abandoned because they couldn't handle the noise. There were pay-by-the-hour hotels on the SeaTac Strip. There were sex shops. There were strip clubs. There were bars. Okay. It was just basically one big cruise with women working the street. And I don't know if it's as prevalent as it is today. I can't imagine that it is. But there were a lot of women that were out there working.
Okay, so a lot of these are prostitutes is what we're saying.
All of them.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Pretty much
okay.
all of them.
That explains also why there's not such a big deal, horribly enough, why there's not such a huge thing about trying to find these women, or why it's maybe not raising the kind of attention that it should.
So it plays into, again, interviews after Gary's arrested when he's asked why he was targeting prostitutes. And one of the main reasons was because he knew that there was not a great chance that they would be reported as missing, that they would probably not come forward.
Not a lot of people probably already know where they're at.
Survive. So, yes. Yeah. And the police just didn't have a priority on trying to find a missing prostitute, because many of these girls were runaways from broken homes or had been abused previously, that were young mothers that had been out on the street trying to fend for their families that had to go do this. People with addictions that, if you go missing, is it because you are out looking for drugs? Yeah. Did you overdose? Anything like that? They were just a level of society that seems to have been forgotten.
Yeah.
This is how close these encounters were. So 16-year-old Opal Mills goes missing August 12th. Her body is found along with victims 4 and 5, so she's the sixth one to go missing. Victims 4 and 5 were found at the same time Opal Mills was on August 15th. There were 2 that were in the Green River, and there was 1 in the grass on the bank. And kind of one of the...
I'm going to ask the morbid questions because I haven't been looking at this for the last week. Is he... pretty decent-sized river?
Decent-sized river, yeah.
Okay, is he sinking bodies?
So 4 and 5 were both found with rocks jammed inside of their vaginas. He says in an interview that the rocks were there and he had the opportunity, so he did it and hoped that it would weigh the bodies down in the river. This would also be...
No, I know. I get it. Like God damn it, this podcast has ruined the way my brain works sometimes. All I'm thinking in my head is the practicality of saying, like, there's not going to be a big enough rock to fucking weight a body down.
Well, in some cases and circumstances that we will talk about a little bit later, he didn't want the bodies to be weighed down. He wanted them to be accessible for activities post-mortem.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just... So he ends up taking Opal Mills on August 12th. They're found August 15th, along with 2 other victims. And Gary kind of has this thing where he basically buries bodies in clusters. So if you find one body, there's a good chance if you start sniffing around that area. He's like some fucked up squirrel
burying nuts for the winter.
A little bit. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good summation, but he does this because it helps him kind of understand where he's left these bodies, because we'll talk about it later. He does come and revisit them. Green River Task Force is formed. It would be led by a guy named Frank Adamson, Dave Reichert, and Bob Krask. Such a cool story. And keep in mind, this man's name is Paul Smith. Paul Smith dies of cancer in 1985. He hands over his cuffs to, or his wife hands over his cuffs.
He dies in 85 or 2001?
2001 is when the cuffs come back into play.
Oh, okay.
So he dies of cancer. His cuffs are handed off. His wife says that his dying wish is that these would be the cuffs that would be put on Gary Ridgway.
The Green River Killer at the time.
Happens in 1985. And we have a long time to go until then. The Green River Task Force was ridiculed quite a bit because these bodies just keep popping up, and they are no closer to finding him in 82, 83. And again, at the end of 82, there have been 6 bodies that were found. And that's not a small number for a 6-month period.
No, at the same time, there's 11 left. Yeah. And so at this point, when they're finding these bodies around the river, are they just going up and down the river at that point being like, there's got to be something else here?
So he has different points that he ends up burying them. He'll use the river. He will use...
Is the reason... Okay, so the reason he's the Green River Killer is because the first bodies were probably found at the Green River.
Yep.
Okay.
Which, again, is... an area that he probably knew pretty well, because as we were talking about earlier, he would routinely take his wives and girlfriends down to fuck by the Green River.
Okay.
So he had some significance here.
Is it the Creedence song that's Green River? God damn it, it is.
But you have, at the end of 1982, you still have 11 bodies floating around. So as the Green River Task Force is getting shit for not being able to zero in on the Green River Killer, there's still these other grenades that are sitting out there that they're going to end up stepping on and finding. And as these numbers keep adding up, they're just going to look worse and worse, because even though they're out investigating, he's already so far ahead with the murders that he's committed that all they can do is try to catch up by finding these bodies.
He's literally 11 murders ahead of them.
Yeah, and these bodies, as they're popping up in the river and these other places, are partially decomposed. When you put a body in water for any certain amount of time, it's going to do some bad things to it. So they're relying on dental records, which, again, are very spotty when you come from a broken household and you're out on the street. Yeah. So identification isn't going fast with any of these, really. Gary had just this game plan that this is why Gary didn't get caught for so long. His primary game plan was he would cruise the SeaTac Strip for hours before and after work. And all he's doing at this point in time is scouting workers. He's finding young, isolated sex workers that are on the side of the road that may not be as privy to the game as somebody who's more seasoned, who somebody would want to take care of themselves. He would see if a girl is walking away with, no pimp, nobody else around, somebody that he can flag down without a lot of witnesses seeing her get in the truck with him, he's all that much better off. So as he's doing this scouting, and he's basically just praying.
He's hunting.
Yeah, he's hunting. Exactly. If he spotted a young isolated worker, he would drive by slowly. He would hold money up out the window. As soon as he realized that he got her attention, he would pull the money in. He would turn off on the next quiet street or into a parking lot somewhere where they would be very discreet. He learned from his earlier mistake with the undercover cop. He would try to verify that they're not a cop.
Are you a cop? You have to tell me if you're a cop if I ask you.
So he would ask them to either flash their titties or pull up their skirt, because he believed that
Cops didn't have boobs or vaginas?
Yeah, that undercover officers wouldn't be allowed to go that far to solicit. He knew that he couldn't mention anything about sex until after they were in the car, because at that point in time, if they're in the car, he's got them. They're in his grasp. Traditionally, he would tell them, hey, I want to become a regular. I'm not going to dick you down on the price at all. I'm going to try to dick you down, but I'm not going to try to dick you down on the price. What you request, I will give to you. He often used his son's toys in his truck to try to put these people at ease, or these women at ease.
It's like having a fucking car seat in the back.
To show them that he's a father, he's a normal guy, which, again, in this situation, there's not a fucking thing.
It makes him
normal.
seem less dangerous, yeah.
Yeah, they would ask to see his ID, and oftentimes when he would flip his ID open, he would cover his name, but on the other side of his ID, he would have the flip book of his son's pictures right there that they would see. He would usually take them to either the woods, the river, his home, his truck, anywhere that he could kind of get them alone in a place to where he knew the environment well enough that he could be protected. We're going to get a little dirty here, a little darker than what we are now. I told Chris before the episode, safe word, he chose pumpernickel. So you hear pumpernickel, we're going to have to ease up a little bit. Basically, his strategy in killing these women would be he would throw them into doggy style away from him on their hands and knees. And he would use something that I would liken to the, hey, what's that over there attempt. And as they popped their heads up, he would reach out and he would grab them by their throats from behind and he would choke them to death. Eventually, he figured out that when they started fighting back and they would leave claw marks and scratches and things like that on his arm, that he had to come up with something else. So he would come up with different ligatures that he could use so he could keep his body away from them. This guy was good when it came to covering things up. He had an instance where he was actually spotted, picking up a girl that went missing and was never found. Her boyfriend and father ended up finding his truck at his house and sent the police over there. Gary talked to the police. He had a full-blown conversation with them. and they ended up leaving his house because they didn't have any evidence to try to hold him.
Yeah.
It was just literally a truck that had a couple primer spots on it and a shell, and that's what was out in front of his house. He admitted that day that he had scratch marks from the woman that the girl that he had just abducted on his arm. And he was concerned that if the police came back and investigated further, they would have seen the scratch marks in the second attempt. He took battery acid and he burned over the scratch marks so they would be indistinguishable. That was how far he would go to cover up wounds on himself.
So does this event put him on the radar as a suspect? Because you would think that, like, if they're not finding this people, they're going to be looking into anything and everything. I don't know if necessarily, and this might be why they were so criticized on it, if they get a lead on someone who could have been doing this, to just go out and have a conversation, but then just leave well enough alone and not try to surveil him or anything like that.
They sniffed him out quite a few times, and we'll talk about kind of where he falls on their radar and how he just evades capture this whole entire time. As far as disposal of evidence goes, this is where you look at a man who has an 80 IQ and you realize that IQ is not quite all that's necessary to be a functional member.
Depends on what the test includes. Yeah, that's the whole point. Is it tests you on certain things.
So his disposal of potential evidence. One thing that kind of blew me away that I kept hearing over and over is when he would take women back to his home, he would require them to go in and use the restroom. I, in my brain, the whole entire time, was telling myself the best case scenario was he had a bit of a germophobia situation and wanted these working women to clean themselves before
the same way in which he was having to be cleaned after he wet the bed. There had to be some type of,
It turns out that he asked them to go in and use the facilities was because as your body is as you die, the muscles in your body release.
You will evacuate your bowels.
And you evacuate your bowels and piss everywhere. Gary didn't want to clean this up. And the only reason that I could figure that Gary figured this out was a trial and error type situation. And so when he would kill these women at his house, he would wrap them in a plastic tarp. He would wait till night. He would pull his truck up to the front door. He would pull the tarp out, throw them in the shell, and take them out. If there was ever a victim that scratched him, what he would do is he would actually clip their fingernails to try to cover up the DNA.
To try to get the DNA that would be underneath their fingernails to make sure you clean it out?
Yeah, on the dead bodies. He would do that. He would strip them of most of their clothes if he didn't use the clothes to tie around their necks and kill them that night. If he didn't have a ligature on hand, he would often use different things. One night, while he was out in the woods, he actually used a pair of socks. He left the body there and returned the next day and found that he had tied them so tightly around her neck that he couldn't get them off. And he said that he didn't want to cut the socks from around her neck because he couldn't wear the socks again. So he just left them on her to be found. It was real crazy stuff. Another thing that he would do...
I don't want to cut the socks off because I want to be able to wear the socks, so I left the socks. This is where that 80... IQ comes in. You see it now and then.
It rears its ugly head every once in a while. The trophies that Gary would take from these women weren't trophies that he would keep. He would steal their jewelry, and he would sneak into the women's bathrooms at the Kenworth plant, and he would leave the dead girls' jewelry inside the bathrooms in hopes that he would spot a woman that he works with walking around the facility wearing the jewelry of the woman that he killed. Girls that he would kill. I keep doing it. They're all girls.
It wasn't trying to dispense with the evidence or anything like that. It was for some fucking sick,
some cheap thrill of seeing jewelry being worn by his coworkers of a girl that he had taken her life.
It's like a weird fucking voyeuristic type. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a real
piece.
Mm-hmm. The reason that he kept these bodies in clusters is because he would revisit their sites. He claims in an interview that he revisited 10 victims for necrophilia purposes. He said that he would return to victims until the flies came. One of the things I left out earlier was his dad also had a friend that worked in the mortuary, and at a young age, he was introduced by this idea of having sex with a dead body as them not being able to say no and them not being able to fight back. Gary puts his own little spin on necrophilia.
I think that might kind of be the common denominator for people having sex with dead bodies.
Gary claimed that, and Gary being the frugal man that he was, claimed that dead bodies were just easier because they didn't charge any money.
Yeah.
And they couldn't fight back, and it wasn't very tough.
Hey, I'm on a budget. I gotta fuck dead bodies. I don't know why I did that in Rodney's voice.
I hearing him talk, he's not a Rodney guy, but he's definitely I don't know. It's tough to go from necrophilia to really anything else. It does get worse. There were times when he had Matthew in his truck when he would pick up a prostitute. I don't know what prostitute's getting inside a truck and sitting next to a potentially 6-7-year-old kid. There was one occasion that he remembers.
There's, being in that profession anyway, especially back then, there is a desperation aspect to it that,
the last thing that I would ever do.
Also, at the same time, think of it like he, in a weird, fucked up way, he's not going to do anything to me. There's a fucking kid here.
Yeah.
And if we go back to the house, I'm assuming we're just going to go back to the house. Kid's going to go in its room and
They ended up going out to the woods, and Matthew stayed in the car as Gary took this woman out into the woods and got her in the doggy position and said, "I think my son's coming," and she popped her head up, and he choked and killed her and left her there and came back and got in the truck, and they drove home. I don't know what he told Matthew. He never said what he told Matthew.
Matthew didn't do any interviews from what you, okay.
I wanted to, but I couldn't even search him out. I can't imagine.
No, I totally get that. Yeah. I'm just wondering if this ever came back into play during trial or anything like that where they heard about this.
Matthew never testified to any of this.
Okay.
There was another time when he was napping in the truck and Gary went and had a corpse rendezvous. There was also another instance where Gary, trying to widen the net of suspicion, went on a camping trip with Matthew down around Portland, paid cash the entire way, had 3 bodies with him in the back of the truck, and as they got down to Portland to camp for that weekend, he disposed of the bodies down there.
He went down to Portland with 3 bodies in the truck?
Yep.
You said there's a camper shell on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can still see a fucking camper shell unless it's like completely blacked out.
Well, and you have to wonder, I mean, how old was Matthew at the time?
That's what I was thinking when,
Yeah, there's just so many of these little things that he does that just, it really kind of shakes the imagination to know that he was willing to put his son in some of these situations. It got bad enough for the task force that they were just anything that they could. They had a fairly accurate profile on kind of who they thought they were looking for. It wasn't bad. They ended up reaching out to a former Washington serial killer, a man that was sitting in prison down in Florida, Ted Bundy. For
Theodore Bundy.
Ted Bundy's help, basically.
Okay, so this is literally a Silence of the Lambs type situation where they're going to a killer to catch a killer.
Yeah, and it's something where Bundy actually plays more of a role in this because Bundy, being a man that killed in Washington, when they're finding some of these decomposed bodies and they don't have a time date for them, they're wondering if these could have been a Bundy victim that he had just never mentioned. Then when they go back...
it's like identifying art. Is this a Bundy or a Ridgway?
They look to find, when they can find confirmation of a name for the person, and then they go and find the missing, which... Eventually, when they get the names for the victims, they find the missing reports, realize that Bundy was either too far away or he was already incarcerated.
So they're just cross-referencing a bunch of shit.
Yeah, but initially they're looking at him and they're like, shit, well, Bundy's in jail and we have all these dead prostitutes showing up. They can't all be his because he would have said something about this. And then as they're identifying, they're like, okay, he's been in prison for a while. He couldn't have done any of these. But Bundy lays out this profile that's pretty shockingly accurate.
Well... We haven't done Ted Bundy because everyone fucking has done Ted Bundy. We'll eventually make it around back to him once Bundy fever dies down. What was Bundy's kind of preferred method
Intelligence.
No, like, how did he kill?
He was...
Was it strangulation? Because this guy seems like it's all strangulation.
He's all strangulation. Bundy was any way that he could kill. There were stabbings, there were shootings, there were strangulations. Anything that he could do, he was pretty all over the map. It was just more the opportunity.
He wasn't married to a method.
Yeah, exactly. Bundy tells the task force, like, first thing you got to do.
Let me out.
Well, and I'm assuming, and it was kind of...
You want to catch a psychopath, you're going to need a psychopath. This is a movie.
There was a little bit of speculation, and I'm sure that they were pretty accurate in the speculation, that Bundy was hoping that if he could help them lead to this arrest, that he could potentially get the death penalty knocked off the table that's waiting for him in Florida as he's sitting on death row in Florida. So he's looking maybe for a little bit of help. But he goes, first thing you guys got to do, stop going on the news every time you find a body. Because he's just sitting there watching you guys find his kills and realizing that he can fuck with you any way that you want. Do you know what I was doing the entire time I was on my spree? I was watching the news. And when I saw you guys find bodies...
It excited me so fucking much.
That I would start screwing with you guys every single time that I killed. There was a victim that was found that was one of Ridgway's that had 2 dead fish on her. She had a handful of, I think it was raw ground pork. She had a empty wine bottle between her legs, and she was posed in a bit of a crucifix type position, and it was one of Ridgway's kills. Ridgway was just fucking with him. He admits that he was just doing this to try to get a rise out of the police. One of the other things that Bundy says is he goes, he will absolutely try to reach out to, quote unquote, help you with the case. And they're like, no, we haven't gotten anything like that yet. Even after they find him, they're like, well, he was wrong about that. That never happened.
Yeah.
And then the interviews came. And when they're interviewing Ridgway, they ask him the question, did you ever try to get in contact with us? And he says, yeah, I wrote you guys a letter. I wrote you guys a letter basically stating that I was a traveling salesman that was coming through town and killing these women. And they said, no, you didn't. That's a lie. They dig back through the case file and they end up finding a letter that they didn't deem valuable because it was so poorly written and it sounded so stupid. Gary had actually written a letter that Bundy said he will reach out and try to help you guys. He also had other tactics where he would leave gum wrappers on the ground, cigarette butts on the ground. He would leave like vacation pamphlets on the ground. He never smoked. He wasn't a gum chewer. And he would just go pick up these pamphlets.
So he's just trying to throw him off the set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's getting so creative with these ways that he's trying to do it. And again, for a guy with 80 IQ, he's just throwing shit to the wall and seeing if it sticks.
Yeah.
All the while, he's still being investigated.
Yeah, and I wonder at the same time, depending on how much information they're giving out during news reports, if he's doing stuff to try to see if it is working and he's throwing them off. They're like, we found this or they found this. And he's just like, oh, perfect. I can just keep dropping shit and just breadcrumbing them off in the other direction.
Exactly. Yeah, there's just so many ways that he can mess with them. 1983 is a huge year for Gary. 26 victims in 1983 go missing. 26 victims is more than 2 a month. That's how fast he is pulling these women off the street.
Is it all still in the same area?
Pretty much. The clusters that those women are being found in around the Green River, there were women that were actually found in a section of forest near a cemetery. There were women that were found near the airport. He had these different dumping grounds that he would put these clusters in.
I'm going to ask really morbid, fucked up questions just from trying to visualize this. Did he have a number that he would put them in clusters? Like, was it always 3? Did it vary?
It was a safety issue. If he felt like he couldn't go to that area because it was being populated by more people, he would find somewhere else.
Okay, so what I mean though is did he have a pattern of was it always when they found the clusters there were 3 women there?
No.
Okay.
No, there could be 3, there could be 5, there could be 1. It just really depended.
Can you imagine coming across one that had fucking 5? I mean, 3 is horrible enough, but you come across and there's fucking 5 women in that.
Well, think about the first one that they find. When they find the girl in the grass, they're like, oh, shit, we got another one. And then they look out into the water like, what are those? Like, you're just finding these I don't want to say the word jackpot, but that's kind of what they are out there. They're just caches of bodies. So 26 go missing in 1983. A total of 15 out of the 43 at this point in time have been found by the end of 1983. So now we're talking about he's so far ahead of them that they've only found 15 of the 43 victims that are out there. So over the coming years, they're just going to keep running into these bodies and be like, well, shit, when did this lady go missing?
It's going to seem weird, too. Are the police finding all of these, or are these being found by hikers, hunters, fishermen?
Civilians, my friend.
Yeah.
Civilians are finding these bodies, going out, doing things such as fishing, truffle hunting, going to look for mushrooms in the woods and running across these bodies. You're out on motorcycles, on dirt bike trails, on mountain bike trails.
Because there were places that had to be accessible for him to get in there.
Yeah. And there were places that had to have a reasonable amount of privacy for him to be able to get in and get out unseen.
Yeah.
They just keep piling up. 82 and 83 are definitely his hot years, which, I mean, if you've got 43 in 2 years, you are picking them up and putting them down. 1984, 2 new victims. By the end of 1984, there's a total of 28 that are found. So even though there's only 2 new victims that get...
So now we're up to 28 of 45.
Yep.
Okay.
So 2 new victims go out in 1984, 28 are found. So you found 13 more, and only 2 more are going on the board. So you're still looking at this, you're like, God, there's no way that there can keep being this many. Like, they keep finding them. 1984, Gary is questioned about the Green River murders. He admits to loving prostitutes, but he would never kill something that he loves. He ended up passing a polygraph test.
The reason why it's not admissible.
Yeah, and this was at a time when they really did put a lot of weight on polygraph tests. He says that he didn't practice, he didn't do anything, he just walked in and relaxed. I mean, how much worse of a person could you have to take a polygraph test than somebody that can keep their cool to go pick up prostitutes and not tip them off?
I've always had questions about that. I've always wanted to take one to see if you could, if it was something, because, you know, there's definitely ways to beat it and everything, obviously. But I'm wondering if it can be as simple as they ask you a question, and then in your own head, you ask yourself a different question, that the answer to that question is true, but you're lying, essentially.
They're not easy. I took one in college for a psychology class.
I guess it's the simple act of you're nervous by just being hooked up to the thing, so you're already going to be kind of,
Well, and I did a horrible acting job because basically in the class, everybody was given a middle envelope with guilty or innocent, and then you're given the answers to the questions that you need to give, and you're trying to fool the polygraph. You're trying to say that you're innocent, even though your thing says guilty to try to get it. I was innocent. I tried to play guilty and just answer the questions lying, saying that I did something. It found me out pretty much immediately.
Okay.
So dog shit actor apparently in college. Still not much of one now, but I think I could do a little bit better on a polygraph. Also, 84, he's questioned, passed the polygraph test, all that kind of stuff. He's still left as a huge suspect, but there's just no evidence to tie him there.
They probably have a certain small pool of people, and just to try to find something until someone new gets on the board, they got to be just looking to the same people.
Yeah, there was a couple others. There was one very unfortunate guy that did try to help, but I forgot his name, but you see a picture of him and you're like, you've killed somebody. You've had to have killed somebody. You're a creepy looking dude. While Ridgway is under suspicion, he talks about in interviews that it's not just the cops that are suspecting him. As he's picking up prostitutes, he said that he picked up at least 50 prostitutes and asked him if he was a Green River killer. And his answer was always the same.
No shit. I mean, those are the people that are getting murdered. Of course there's going to be. And so you're in this stretch. It's the SeaTac strip or whatever you're saying it is. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some type of overlap of information coming out, especially if there's this many people missing. And you're going to have like people that know girls there that know other girls that have gone missing. The fact that you're still out there doing that shows of the desperation, which sucks horribly that they're still doing this even while this guy's active. But yeah, are you the Green? No, of course not.
But he kind of had a good cover because he wasn't this big, strong, hulking man. He was just a very average-sized, kind of puny individual with a shitty mustache that when they would ask him, he'd go, do I look like the Green River Killer? Nobody knows what the Green River Killer looks like, but in everybody's mind, they're like,
I don't know. Do you look like the Green River Killer?
To kill this many girls, you kind of have to build this guy up to be something bigger in your head. He also would pretty routinely call like pimps to get women sent to his house or to find the women that they had working on the street. And he would go frequent them. And then the next day after he had killed them or they'd gone missing, he would call again to ask for the services again to try to act like it was, he didn't know that they had gone missing. Like he was trying to rent their services again. But if he was
asked, why would I call if I knew they were missing? Why would I call and ask for them? Come on.
There's always kind of this weird thing, though, because he says that he was asked at least 50 times if he was a Green River Killer. That's more than he killed. So there are still instances where he's going out and picking up prostitutes. He may not feel the vibe. There might be something wrong. He could have been seen. He still goes through and has sex with them and pays them, but he goes back and he drops them off. So he's leaving women out on the street, girls out on the street that could say, no, Gary brought me back. If he was a Green River Killer, he would have killed me. One of his other techniques, and this is why Kenworth had to have been paying him pretty well, or maybe everything was just cheap back in the 80s. He started realizing that as he was leaving scenes, he would see his own tire tracks as he's pulling into these places to go revisit. So he realizes that he needs to continuously keep getting his tires changed on his truck so they don't match any of the tread patterns in the areas, which tires aren't cheap.
No.
And the rate that this guy's killing people, he's switching out tires probably pretty frequently just to stay off the radar. 1985. Big changing moment for Gary. Gary meets a woman named Judith Mawson. She was at a bar for one of these Parents Without Partners mixers. I believe he ended up getting like 4 to 7 girlfriends, something like that, from this Parents Without Partners. She fell for Gary pretty much right away. She thought that he was a perfect man. She was coming off of a terrible marriage. She had, I believe it was at least one daughter. To listen to her in interviews, she just said that Gary was everything that she had wanted. He was a man that treated her well. And that's the weird thing is I know there are interviews with Matthew out there. I couldn't bear to bring myself to him. I did see snippets where he would be asked what kind of father was Gary. And he would say things like he was at every one of my school recitals. He would come to my games all the time. He was a fairly active father to try
this is why he stays under the radar so much.
Yeah, to try to keep up this double life. And Judith just sees these absolute great things inside of Gary. She moved in with Gary, so she meets him in February 1985. By May, she's moved in with Ridgway. 1987, police search Gary's home. They're looking for green fibers that match carpet fibers that were found on one of the victims. Gary had actually rented out an apartment space that was above his garage, and they go and they question the people living in the, say, is there anything you've seen weird for Gary? Do you know if he has green carpet? And they're like, we're pretty sure he's got green carpet. First time we came into the house, it looked like it was green. So they get the search warrant. They break into Gary's house, not break in, slam in with the warrant. Guess who's waiting in there is with them, with Gary and his wife, or girlfriend at this point. Gary's mother. Gary's mother, who is still alive and still a very domineering part of his life. Someone who all 3 wives had mentioned that she would actually buy Gary's clothes for him.
Makes sense.
Dress him and still control him. Didn't say anything about cleaning his penis as an adult. I hope that that's a dick as an adult. I hope that that's not something that continued that they were okay with. But she's...
How's Gary? Are you keeping his penis clean?
Yeah. Do I need to roll up my sleeves and get in there? Is he still wetting the bed? They all 3 just... his mother begins screaming and yelling at the police, saying that there's no way that her son could do anything and they're not going to find anything. And all the time, Judith is just kind of standing there watching what's going on. As they go through the house, they walk into the house, they realize that carpet ain't green. It's pretty new carpet. something that may have been replaced probably right around the time that Judith had moved in with him. Judith has remarked, saying that the first time that she came over to Gary's house, he didn't have any carpets. His carpets had all been pulled up, and he said that he was in the process of getting new carpet because the last people that he had rented the house to prior to moving back into the house, because he was living up in the attic space, to make a little extra money, I'm sure, for the tires and the lifestyle that he was living, paying the prostitutes that he didn't kill.
It's expensive.
Yeah. He said that they had a child. The child made a mess on the carpet, so he decided to replace the carpet in the whole entire house. Somehow she bought that. That seems like a pretty bad story. But the police go in. They don't find any green carpet, anything like that. They get pretty smart. If you can't find green fibers because there's no green carpet anymore, is there an appliance that's used on carpet that may have some fibers left in there?
I would assume a vacuum?
They searched the vacuum. Said that this was the cleanest vacuum that they had ever seen. Gary must have been buying new vacuums as he was going along cleaning up these crime scenes too. So he's thinking ahead.
His intelligence is definitely geared toward a specific thing.
Yeah, and he's very good at trying to stay under the radar. Before we continue on with the story, you want to take a bathroom break?
Yep. Well, hello. Listen, while we head to the restroom and get ourselves something to drink, why don't you do something nice for yourselves? Head on over to patreon.com/historicallyhigh and get signed up for a little bonus content. I mean, come on, you deserve it.
If you want to keep up with this, our main source of social media is going to be our Instagram, which is Historically High Pod, Pod.
You can also head over to, it's Twitter, it's X, it's Twitter, come on, at Historically High, and that's high, H-I like, high.
If you have any recommendations, you want to get to us, just want to reach out and say hello, you can hit us up on our email at historicallyhighpodcast, HIGH podcast at gmail.com.
All right, and with that said, let's get back to the good stuff. Okay, carpet's been replaced, vacuum's been replaced. What they thought they were going in there for, they don't have any of it. So what do they do at that point?
They get what they can. Part of their warrant was for hair and saliva samples, which, again, at this point in time, we're talking about 1987. DNA technology is not there yet. Instead of just using a swab, they literally handed him a cotton ball and said, "Pop this in your mouth." Like, that was how little they knew.
Do you think that's kind of a mental ploy at that point when, for instance, like, it's probably something that FBI has been using or trying to pioneer. So you're doing an investigation. Maybe it's not known that not all law enforcement has that. So when you go in there and like, we're taking a DNA and a hair sample, is that supposed to be something to be like, oh, we're definitely going to catch you, so you better just come clean?
It could be. And I know that they did let him know that they did have DNA that they had pulled off of some of the bodies. At the same time, if he's as good at disposing of bodies, if he's good enough to know that I have to clip their fingernails in case they took some of my DNA.
I feel like he's honed the craft at this point.
Yeah. And this is where kind of the time element kicks in, because now that they have these hair and saliva samples, it's just going to take time for technology and DNA research to get close enough to do this. Yeah.
Hey, this is kind of like we talked about in the ILM episode.
Yes.
You couldn't make a movie until the technology had caught up. You can't catch this fucking psychopath until the technology catches up.
He takes a second polygraph at this point in time and passes that one with flying colors too. This dude is very good at taking polygraph tests because he just doesn't feel. Mm-hmm. There's nothing there to raise his blood pressure.
Yeah.
He's
dehumanizing the human aspect that would force your pulse to, quicken and everything like that. He doesn't have that.
Oh, he's just a stone cold killer. Judith, undeterred by the police searches and the questioning and finding out that he was a suspect.
Not my Gary.
Yeah. Ends up marrying him in 1988. In the time of their relationship, Gary cooled off. I mean, it's pretty weird to say because this isn't a typical serial killer pattern, but it was almost like Judith may have found or given him something that he was missing in his life.
He was no longer insatiable.
I think that he was less insatiable because he had maybe developed a taste for post-life
Bodies.
Yes.
Post-life coitus.
Yes. And I think that was maybe revving the engine down a little bit.
You're way too hot.
There's times in interviews with Judith. Oh God, There's times in interviews with Judith when she will make a reference to saying, I wonder how many lives I saved coming into Gary's, which doesn't sound
legitimate
good to me.
Yeah, that's a legitimate line of thinking.
Yeah. And again, she's a victim in this whole entire thing. For as much as I want to look at Judith and just shake this woman and say,
you dumb bitch.
Did you not know what was going on? Because Gary has times where he admits this is how he admits it. He fell off the wagon during his marriage. Not that he was just visiting prostitutes. He fell off the wagon by killing more prostitutes. So 1986, there's one victim. She was 19-year-old Patricia Barzak. At this point in time, in 1986, they'd found 38 of the 46 bodies. So through 85 into 86, they're finding still just more of this trail that he's left. 1987, there's one victim, Roberta Hayes. She was 21. By the end of 87, they found 47 bodies. So they're
as disgusting as it sounds like we're closing the gap. Well, they have no clue how many are there.
There could be 100 left.
Yeah.
They have no idea. All they're going by is these missing reports, which again, Gary's not the only guy working at this time. So these missing prostitute
That's
women
what's
reports,
so crazy when you were telling me about that, how there was a point in time. Are you going to get into that where there was okay.
Yeah. 1989, Gary and Judith moved from SeaTac to Auburn, Washington, where the neighbors say that Gary was just too friendly. He was out there talking to people all the time. If he saw two neighbors outside chopping it up, he would come out and try to get into conversations.
Oh, God, it's fucking Gary.
Yeah, they said
Get back inside.
He said that he was a nice guy, but at the same time, he just wasn't anybody that they wanted to associate with. He said that he would be routinely outside gardening. He kept a very clean, well-manicured lawn along with a house that was kept up very well. This should have been the number one thing that proved that he was a psychopath was they said that him and Judith would go out and walk their poodle together. Anybody that owns a poodle is a little nuts. Not to say that I don't like our listeners that probably own poodles, but I've never met a nice one.
That's true. Yeah, they're kind of assholes.
They always kind of seem to be
fancy assholes.
Yep. I think that he truly loved Judith. I know that love is probably...
As much as he could love a living person.
Yes, exactly. Gary, I don't know if he had the capacity for love, but whatever was close enough to something with a pulse that he had feelings for, I think he reached that ultimate max with her. 1990, 36-year-old victim, Martha Reeves. And again, he fell off the wagon by just killing more women. This is kind of a deviation, though, because up until this point, Gary's MO was we are going to kill young, unseasoned girls. Mm-hmm. We're going to kill people that don't necessarily understand what's going on. I think prior to this, the oldest victim that he had was 31. Now he's got a 36-year-old. Is it because he's spending less time out cruising and maybe settling for just somebody who he can grab without anybody seeing?
No, I think that's what it is his options now for the amount of... He used to have unlimited time. The only thing that dictated his time was time that he had his kid or time that he was at work. He now has time in which if he's gone and there's questions, he doesn't know at what point. He knows that Judith is probably loyal, but at the same time, there's only so far it can go. It doesn't even have to be her turning him in. It could be a line of questioning in which, like, Judith, when was he here? And she's like, oh, I can't remember, was it? And something she slips up and says. So he's having to limit the amount of exposure he has killing these. And are they still prostitutes at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty much all prostitutes. I think there was one or two of them that were just women that were hitchhiking that he had offered to receive their services, I think you would say.
So it looks like he has a little bit of a gap there.
Yeah. There is a bit of a gap at that point in time. just because he's, like I say, he's busy. 1998. So we go from 1990 to 1998. Pretty decent amount of time. 49th victim, again, a 38-year-old Patricia Yellowrobe. So we have 8 years cooling period after there was a certain slowing down meeting Judith, but he's still got to scratch that itch. 1998's a very recent murder.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things.
It's almost 27 years ago.
Oh, God, it is a while ago then. Yellowrobe is his last known victim of the Green River Killer. Of the 49 victims, all of them have been found. The most recent discovery was in 2010. So we're talking a very, very long run that he had of these women being out there. Her name was Rebecca Marrero. She was reported missing December 3rd, 1982. So in the first year of his spree, she was
28 years,
the last one to be found. Yeah, it's a pretty long time. His only known survivor of the attempted strangulations is a woman named Rebecca Garday. Call her Garday because it sounds fancier. She was hitchhiking in November 1982, and Gary went and picked her up. He offered her $25 for a blowjob, which seems pretty cheap. Takes her out in the woods, and he can't get his dick hard. He's just slapping it around. Apparently, she found this pretty amusing, and he skipped the whole trying to get sex part and just immediately began choking her. She ended up fighting him off. Again, he's a very slight man. He's not a tough guy. She ends up escaping and running away. She goes to the police.
What did she do? You have something written up there. Don't skip over that.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
She ends up going to the police, tells them exactly what she found, tells him that his name is Gary Ridgway because she saw his ID and she knows his name, where he lives, and all of his vital stuff. The police go and speak to him. So this is 1982.
Okay, you saw the look on my face because I was like, how the fuck do they not immediately go after this guy? But again, this is early on. Okay.
Yeah. They go speak to him. During the interview process, he tells a story that he had paid her $25 for a blowy out in the woods. She got angry about the money, and then...
Why am I on trial here? I never got the blowjob.
Well...
This is theft.
He got the blowjob. He claimed that she bit his penis. And...
You could say dick now. He's an adult.
As soon as she bit his dick, he got angry and tried to choke her. And apparently the police are like, ooh, that's a different story than she told. Let's go back and question her some more. They go back and question her, and they're like, well, he's saying that you bit his dick because you wanted more money. And she's like, I came to you with this problem. Do you think I would have come to you about this attempted rape and strangulation?
You think I'm coming to the cops about over $25?
Yeah. So once she realizes that this probably isn't going anywhere because the police don't really believe her story, she just ends up not pursuing charges. Had she pursued charges and had the police actually listen to this story and really believe what this woman had to say, there's a good chance that there's a lot of women that wouldn't have died.
Well, no shit. Even on looking at the notes we have right here in front of us, November 1982, looking up there, 28 of his victims go missing in 1983.
Yeah.
And then every victim after that.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it was 17 in the first year, so I would probably put it at maybe 14 women that he had killed up to that point. So 49 women total, you take away 14, that's what, 35 women that could have survived?
And there's 14 missing women. And this is the perfect scenario in which something like this happens. You know that those women have been choked.
Yeah, but again, we talked about by the end of 1982, they'd only found 6 bodies, which again, I'm not saying that's not a lot, because that 6 bodies in and of itself should be enough to be like, ooh,
yeah,
we got to look at this guy a little deeper. So there definitely was some mismanagement, and so much of it I have to place on the police force because these were women that they just weren't that interested in trying to protect. I know that it sounds shitty to say, I hate blaming the police for this, but they just weren't a priority. November 30th, 2001, Ridgway is finally arrested by a man named Detective Molinex with the 15-year-old Paul Smith handcuffs. that he had promised the wife of Paul Smith all the way back in 1985 that those would be the handcuffs that went on the Green River Killer. 52-year-old Gary Ridgway is finally arrested at his job at the Kenworth factory. They had come up with, it was a, I feel so stupid doing all this research and then not remembering this stuff and not writing it down. It was some sort of repeating DNA test to where they pull a section of the DNA out, they form a profile, and then they run it multiple times up against other DNA samples to see if they can find a match.
So it's kind of like an audit. Hey, we have all these cold cases. Hey, we have this DNA. Let's go ahead and run it through to see if the advances in technology have picked up anything additional or if it gets a ping on any of the more recent murders.
Yeah, and it was just specifically against that cotton ball that he had swabbed in his mouth, and then the DNA that they had extracted from the first victims that they had found. Because they had found some semen and a couple other things on these women.
But they just didn't have enough to match that in a sense where it would be admissible in court, I guess.
It's a scary race because if the technology hasn't caught up by the time you've used the entire DNA sample that you have,
oh shit, yeah,
you have nothing to use at that point in time. So you have to be very cerebral with when you're going to use that sample to test something in hopes that the DNA technology has come far enough.
It's like having a coupon book for blowjobs. Like you only have a finite amount of blowjobs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to know when to use them. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. And luckily in 2001, they had come up with this repeating DNA system to where they could pretty much zero in on this. He was originally indicted on 4 charges of first-degree murder for Chapman, for Mills, for Hines, and then for a woman named Carol Christensen. 3 more of these women would be added. And again, this is another fucking, what are you doing? There were positive forensics tests that matched microscopic spray paint molecules to the spray paint that was used at the Kenworth factory. The exact same brand and the exact same like product numbers that they were using.
Obviously a large leap in forensics technology and methods at this point.
Is it? Because they used a microscope to look in and see the color.
I don't know.
Kind of paint. And they were investigating Ridgway this whole time.
Yeah, I know.
They didn't think, hey, we found spray paint. This guy paints trucks for a living. Maybe we go see what he's using.
He would have just taken a polygraph and gotten away with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess hindsight's 20/20. With this new information, they come forward and they slap this indictment together with 7 victims now. And 7 first-degree premeditation murder charges are going to warrant the death penalty. As the death penalty comes on the table, the DA goes to the defense. The defense is like, Gary doesn't want to die. He might have some information. And throughout this whole process up to this point, Gary has denied everything. He's told Judith that he didn't do it. He's told the police that he didn't do it. They're telling him about the DNA. He's saying that, yes, there's a good chance that he frequented these women, and there's a good chance that he left some DNA on them. He wasn't the last person that was seen with any of them. Therefore, that DNA just got there prior to them dying or going missing.
I had sex with a lot of prostitutes.
Once he realizes the gravity of the situation, yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot of Ridgway DNA on the SeaTac strip. There's probably still some today, even, with the amount that he was out there and looking for these women. He realizes the death penalty's on the table, and they have this DNA evidence. They have the forensics of the microscopic spray paint molecules. He's going to die. And right around that time, Gary starts to change his tune a little bit and says, hey, I could probably sew up some of these other murders for you guys and put a bow on them if you're willing to take the death penalty off the table. They go to the victims' families in some of these cases, and they say, hey, we could kill him now, but there's a chance that we could get closure for a lot more families. What do you guys think? Some of them were like, fucking fry him. We don't care. Somebody needs to pay for our daughter
either way,
dying.
but yeah.
Yes. And others like, no, you're giving us closure by prosecuting him. We need to try to give as many families as possible.
We know how
closure.
we feel. We would like other, we knew how we felt without the closure. Like, we know how we feel now with the closure. Let's give it to the other people.
And in true selfless form, those people saying that were enough to go ahead and have them hammer out a deal to where Gary would go ahead and plead to all 48 known victims. He would actually lead investigators. This took 2 years. He gets arrested in 2001. In 2003, he ends up pleading. In 2003, he leads investigators to 3 more bodies that were all a part of this plea deal. Part of the plea was he had to cooperate to the best of his abilities, because if he didn't, the death penalty would still come on the table if they found some victims that he may not have claimed and left some DNA on that they find. For this plea deal, he gets sentenced to 48 consecutive life terms. So not concurrent. He's not running one life term for 48 sentences. He runs the first life term. If somehow they bring him back to life and reanimate his ass, he still has 47 more consecutive life terms to go. They also slap an additional 480 years for evidence tampering, 10 years for each one of these cases. It sounds silly, but I do believe that the power of the word consecutive in there, and just knowing the doom that you have, that there's just no chance of parole, there's no chance of getting out, there's no chance of anything.
I think in there, that's a token of the law of saying every victim is going to go ahead and get there. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a punishment for every crime that you committed. The 480 years was just probably so the judge could say,
just flavor.
Yeah, you're getting another 480 years. As we talked about, 2010, the skull of Marie Malvar was found. He enters another plea for that.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I forgot about that one, too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's mine.
Oh, is that mine?
Once you get past 35, they all kind of blur together and you lose track.
Unfortunately, when they're asking him about his victims, that's exactly what he said. When they were asking him about what happened with this victim, what happened with that victim, he said, you know what? I didn't know most of their names. Most of them run together. If you do something 49 times, I mean, you're not going to remember times 23 and 25 and 26. And that's just, I don't remember the last 15 times that I've taken out the trash. I know that I've done it, but I couldn't tell you anything that happened.
Big difference, dude.
But that's what I'm saying. In our minds, that's what it is. In his mind,
it's so mundane. It's such a mundane thing to him.
Just the whole entire time he's going through and he's confessing to at least 71 murders, which, I mean, 71 murders is so many, but at the same time, I don't think that it's probably even that many. I think that there's got to be more out there. Just judging by the amount of time. And part of the reason this gets a little convoluted is because we said that his last kill was, 1999, 97?
That was 98.
98. There was a point in time where there was a man named Robert Lee Yates that had killed 13 prostitutes in eastern Washington from 1995 to 1997. So there were even questions from the police as these new prostitutes are being found strangled to death in eastern Washington. We're like, shit.
Is it a copycat killer?
Or did the Green River Killer just move out of the area?
Okay.
And turns out that
because it was done during the same time that he was also on the,
he was still on the run. And he's still, 1998, if that's his last kill, from 95 to 97, there's a chance that these could be his too. Unfortunately for Robert Lee Yates, they did pin it to him. He had enough honor, though, to when he was asked questions about these murders that were committed, he said, no, they weren't mine. I am not going to take credit for work that I didn't do. So it's just that...
Oh, so ethical.
Yeah. And it's like I say, when he was being asked questions about this stuff, he said, I believe that I was the greatest killer of my time. I did this better than anybody else. They asked him on a scale of 1 to 5 how evil he believes that he was, and he said a 3. And when they asked him why he said a 3, he said, I didn't torture him.
You strangled him, motherfucker.
Yeah, well, and then again, the post-mortem desecration also feels like you're going to ratchet up the evil a little bit more. His reasoning for his confessions in court was that he did not want to pay for sex, is why he killed these women. He said that in front of all of the grieving families that were in the courtroom at the time. As they were going through prior to sentencing, I think they did victim impact statements. You had these families following each other just one after another, talking about how he's irreparably changed their families and changed their lives. There were actually, I believe it was 2 that I heard. There could have been more, but the 2 that I heard forgave him for what he did. And there would be women, parents, mothers, fathers, sisters, anybody would stand up and talk about just how he's ruined their lives and how he took their sister away from them, stone-faced the entire time.
He's probably getting off on it.
The only times that I heard him, or it was remarked that he cried, both the times that he was forgiven, he cried. And then when he was talking about killing his mother in the interview, he cried during that time too. So this is a guy.
And he wasn't crying because they forgive him from an emotional. It was probably just like, don't take this from me.
Yeah. Well, and that was another thing that he had said that I forgot to talk about. He said that when he would see that they would find bodies in clusters, he would actually get angry because he felt like they were stealing something that he put there that was his, that he owned, and they were taking away his property. That was the emotion that he had.
Yeah.
He wasn't scared that he was going to get caught. He was angry that somebody else was touching his possessions because they were his, because he took their lives. Just such a fuck. There was a point in time where he had been kept in isolation for so long in Walla Walla that they actually moved him to Florence, the Supermax, where Uncle Ted was, and where El Chapo is now and Terry Nichols is now. There was such outrage by the public in Washington that were like, why are you guys giving this guy any sort of treatment and putting him out there where he can actually speak to other people and not holding him in there? And I guess privately, a few years later, they decided to bring him back and throw him back in segregation because they didn't feel that it was necessary. They have hundreds of hours of interviews and interrogations that were recorded after his arrest, and you can see a change in when he's denying everything that he did to finally when he has to tell the truth in order to save his own life, and just the changes that he has. And he's so bad at choosing words.
It's such a strange fucking concept that somebody who is so casual about death is so fearful about their own.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that part of the reason why I think that these anonymous calls about him being in end-of-life care are probably from people who are fans of his that were trying to get his name back into the media. Because before these random things had come out, Ridgway's name hadn't been out in forever.
Yeah.
Part of these interviews are him going out on these field trips to go show bodies. And you can see that he has this level of excitement getting to leave the prison and go out and just be basically king for a day to go out and point to these bodies. And after a while, they realized that he was just using them to get out of segregation. And so they finally stopped cutting him off. One of the reasons they did bring him back to Walla Walla was they said that it would make him more available for going out for these searches, or if they had any questions about bodies that they had found. Currently resides in Walla Walla, a Washington State Prison. The city's so nice they named it twice and put the state prison in there. This really kind of blows me away as far as murder stats for this country. There's currently no hard stats for unsolved murders of prostitutes. So
It's probably one of those situations where the stat is so bad that by showing that and showing that's what law enforcement has been able to do, that it would be very detrimental.
Yeah, and I mean, they just don't care enough to compile this. That's kind of what it comes down to, is it would be so huge like you're talking about, but at the same time...
Well, here's the other thing that I kind of see out of this. If your solve rate for murders of prostitutes is very, very low, and you make that known, who is every person that's going to kill somebody going to go after?
Prostitutes.
Yeah.
the same time, if you're not even keeping the stat, that's got to
That's not to
excite
say you're
somebody
not.
too.
Well, there's a difference between there are no hard stats versus there are no released statistics.
Yeah. I also think, too, the stats would never be accurate. They would always be skewed because you have people that aren't going and reporting missing women that were out there performing on the street. This blows me away. So in 2023, there was kind of a variable percentage. The solve rate on murders is somewhere between 50 to 58%.
So that's saying that a little less than either half or a little less than half of murders go unsolved.
Yeah, that blows me away. So they said that 60s and 70s, there was about a 70% solve rate on murders. So it was better back then. Also, the scary factor that you add in for the 50 to 58% is that includes murders solved within that year that had previously happened. So if you're digging up cold cases and making those solves, those aren't solved murders that happened in 2023 or the current year. That's actually the murders that are basically up to then hadn't been solved that were solved in that year.
Gotcha.
Basically, the rise, or I guess the fall in solve rate on murders is due to just so many factors of populations that are huge. Gun violence is, I mean, it's so easy to shoot a random stranger and
Get away.
yeah. I mean, if it's not a close family member or somebody tied in, if it's just a random act of violence, it's going to be very, very hard to find it. That totals about over 250,000 homicides since 1980 that still remain unsolved. So 45 years has yielded 250,000 homicides that just haven't been solved.
That's fucking bonkers, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of families that have a lot of questions that may never get answers. And you have to hope. That's why digging into cold cases is so important, to just give somebody closure. I can't imagine.
Look, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like his was a cold case and they found out.
Yeah, and they went back and they did the work and they made sure that these people had closure. I can't imagine living my life knowing that there's just an unsolved mystery of one of my loved ones and how they perished. It's so sad and so scary. And I mean, up to this point, up to the recording tonight, we're still in 2025. This will come out in 2026. He is still alive. Got to cross our fingers that by the time this comes out, guy down below has come to his senses and realized that he needs to bring Gary home, and he takes him from us.
If it happens, I think we should use this newfound power to start covering more people accused of or guilty of heinous crimes and cover them.
Yeah, I got a long list that I think we could really go after and make this all happen. This was, I think, my first kind of solo legitimate serial killer as far as a teaching episode to do. It wasn't necessarily as easy. This isn't something I find a lot of interest in it. The word enjoyment kind of makes me feel sick.
I think you can see there's not as much light behind your eyes. There's a difference between being like, oh, I'm going to watch this documentary or I'm going to look into this a little bit, and then having that freedom to say, oh, I get to not have to look into that. This, I don't like this. I'm going to go ahead and get away from this, versus I have to be in this for multiple days and then I have to lead up to talking about this.
Yeah, just the feeling of sharing this information. I know that people find this interesting. I hope that they enjoyed a little bit of it. I hope that they enjoyed the whole thing. But it becomes hard, and I have a pretty profound respect for people that do documentaries about serial killers and people that do, just weekly podcasts on them, because it sucks a lot of life out of you.
Yeah.
And granted, we didn't start on easy level. I mean, we've done some serial killers that had single-digit victims and there were old stories and had a little cachet behind them, and guys that haven't been found, like the Zodiac. But at the same time, this guy is number 2 on the list of most prolific serial killers. And it's not even so much of the torture aspect. It's just the sheer amount in numbers and just the senseless, emotionless killing.
Yeah.
to be able to take a life with your bare hands and then switch
over and over and over and over again.
That it just becomes old hat. I don't know how it's possible. FBI profilers, the guys that work for the behavioral science unit, I can't imagine that they have dreams that are ever nice.
Yeah.
It's just so much work to try to take this stuff. But at the same time, it's so important to talk about this shit because people always say, oh, well, the age of the serial killer is dead. It ain't dead.
No, there's a lot of people out there that could be considered serial killers that got away with it.
Well, yeah, and there's 250,000 homicides that remain unsolved since 1980.
What's more likely, that there's 250,000 people that have murdered someone and gotten away with it, or that there's 100,000 people that have murdered multiple people?
Yeah, it's so important to talk about and just understand that there are victims out there that still need help, and you still need to look into this. It's not a guilty pleasure for me as much as it is just an interest in the human condition to figure out how these people can do this kind of stuff. And
it's a nice little change of pace because we get to talk about historical assholes all the time, but it's on a grand scale of being in charge of countries or being in charge of armies or things like that. But then you see things like this and you're like, singular individuals with literally no power or authority are still as much of a threat as people that do get that.
Yeah, and there's varying degrees of evil.
Yeah.
And I
think there's just different flavors. I think it's like Baskin Robbins.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of flavors of evil.
You're going to be happy to leave this one behind, aren't you?
Yeah, on to brighter subjects.
I'm going to listen to CCR's Green River on the way home and see if that'll kind of get me out of it.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't set up any dreams. They're not pleasant.
I was going to say, that's what's fun about doing this late at night, especially ending on topics like this.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can go home and get
I'm going to go put on Ted Lasso or Lord of the Rings or something.
Yeah, this is going to be an Always Sunny night for me.
All right, man. You got anything else?
Nope. I think we're covered.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this very taxing episode of Historically High, and we'll catch you next week.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit them with it.
Our Instagram is Historically High Pod, Historically High POD, and we are on Twitter at Historically High. That's Historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.